Well, welcome and good to see some familiar faces, also some new faces around. So thank you for joining us this month for our monthly Unlock Higher Education meeting. Super excited about what we have in store as far as discussions are today. And for those of you who have been here before, you know about Unlock Higher Education and our platform, and what we intend to do is always, lift up the voices of formerly and currently incarcerated students. And for those of you who have not been here before, welcome. And just to give you a little history of Unlock Higher Education, we are a place of collaboration, a place of discussion for access to higher education. We bring community leaders, we bring, individuals, organizations, institutions together to ensure that we are discussing best practices to bring it into our own personal community. So again, this is a place to be when it comes to what's going on in this space of higher education and the advocacy of it. And with that, we will start our agenda for today. It should be in the chat, so please refer to the agenda. And as we usually do, is we take a few minutes just to get to know each other. And it's just a few minutes that we break out into rooms for introductions, and you can talk about your name, your location, your organization, and what brings you to Unlock Higher Education, so we get to know our new and our old family friends. And we'll get started with our breakout rooms. Conversation, very interesting conversation that I had with my group, but now I will open it up to some of you who may want to share what you learned with the people you met in your group. We'll take a couple of minutes for that. So who wants to share?
Mary Ann, do you want to share? You guys were having a really interesting conversation.
Sure. Yeah, Alan introduced himself, and he was telling me, it was kind of breaking up at the beginning, so I'm not sure exactly what organization is. He could say specifically, but we were talking about that he works on the federal Pell Grant program. So we were having a conversation about the current new legislation and what's kind of anticipated, but it's still going to be, sounds like a work in progress in terms of how it's regulated. So it was an interesting short conversation, but I was happy to hear more perhaps later about what he's working on specifically.
Good summary, Marianne. And it's Vera Institute of Justice, by the way. Hey, everybody. Hey, Barbie. See you over there. Sorry I can't be on camera right now.
Thank you.
Well, I'll share also real quick. I was with a great team, one who's been here shortly before, Raj, and also one who's familiar to us, Barbie. So welcome, both of you. Welcome back. And we were talking about how in the juggle of all of this work that we do, sometimes we are far from what it indicates an actual success. And to me, what indicates that is the direct service. So in my hats of all the things that I have to do and attend to on a daily basis, when I provide that, I always keep that ability to provide, that direct service. And when I do so, that's where I get like the most gratification, right? That small little simple thing where you see directly that you've impacted somebody's life, and you're able to see that smile in that face because they had access to a school desk and they were able to sit down and write little notes from whatever class they were able to attend to. And so those little simple things really, kind of like use out all of that white noise that comes with doing this work on a daily basis. So I'm grateful that I'm able to, provide different hats and different scopes, but most importantly, to be able to continue to have that component of direct services, which are so impactful for me, because I'm able to see those results directly. All right. Well, anybody else want to share what they learned, who they met, anything new?
I just want to say I am so glad to see Barbie back, and I love seeing you. Did you have a good conversation too? It's always one of my favorite people to see.
I did. I was with Judith and Raj, and it's so nice to almost see the generations of Unlock Higher Ed. Judith is an OG, of course, and Raj relatively new. So it's nice to see that not only is the torch kind of being passed, but the ripple effect that we talk about often is real. So it's always great to see folks coming in and being able to be in conversation with folks who have been around and have some knowledge to share and some things to learn as well.
Well, awesome for that. And now we will get started with our agenda. It's been put on the chat, and I'm happy to introduce one of our speakers for today, and that will be Trip. Elizabeth has had some difficulty joining at this time, so we will see, and hopefully she will able to join us. If not, Trip is able to definitely take on the whole realm of this work. He's been working extremely closely with Elizabeth on getting this collaborative in place and going, and I'm so grateful for having them, two of our subcommittee chairs, heading this particular endeavor that Unlock Higher Education has taken on. And with that, I'll say Trip Finity Taylor champions transformative change for incarcerated individuals and returning citizens, specializing in the development of impactful education and employment programs. His extensive experience ranges from leadership in educational settings to crafting innovative programs, with his work featuring several respected resources. When not dedicating his effort to this vital work, Trip enjoys the tranquility nature near his home outside Seattle, Washington. It's so great that you're able to enjoy nature. I wish that was the case here. It's just getting crowded and crowded and more crowded here in South Florida. I'm ready to go and enjoy nature. So I'm jealous about that part, Trip, but thank you for being here and welcome, Trip.
Thank you, Judith. Really appreciate it. You will all have to apologize or excuse me. I do have something in my throat that's been going on, lingering for a little while. So if I have to cough, I apologize. Judith, really excited to be here. Elizabeth and I have had the honor to help put together, design this phenomenal collaborative. For those people that were present at NCHEP this year, we did introduce the State Education and Workforce Advisory Collaborative, or CWAC for short, with the idea that we have a lot of different people across the country doing phenomenal things. But sometimes when you're advocating, you feel like you're all alone. You feel like you're in a silo. And there are so many neat things that happen, states right next to you, states across the country, that could easily help support you in your own state advocacy. So we designed this program to provide just that, space and time for policy advocates, for people that are passionate about providing access to higher education in prison, access to workforce development, access to fair chance employment. And a lot of that, to be sustainable, takes policy. It takes changes in the law. And people in this room, some phenomenal people in this room, know exactly what I'm talking about. The years and years and years that it takes to get legislators to, number one, see the problem, and then two, to figure out how to put it down that fits within the budget, fits within the politics, and can be a sustainable thing moving forward. There's some states that have done phenomenal. There's some states that have been pushing and pushing and pushing and just haven't got over that hump. There's some states that are falling behind, and they just don't, they need the support of people that have been there, that have climbed over some of those hurdles. So this collaborative is designed as a kind of a cohort-based collaborative. We're going to be together for 12 to 18 months, meeting regularly to discuss what we have experienced in our own states, to get some training on basic legislation, on what works in advocacy, on storytelling, on policy research and design. So through the collaborative nature that we have in this field, through some of the phenomenal organizations that have put trainings together, through the strength in UHE and the representatives that come here, we're bringing together hopefully one from every state. At current date, we have 41 states represented in the collaborative. We've spent the last 3 weeks doing interviews for everyone that enrolled or applied from after NCHEP to most recently. The interviews have been phenomenal. We have met some amazing people. We're so excited to get started. And hopefully at some point we can get representatives from every state, district, and territory to be involved in the collaborative moving forward. Our first collaborative meeting will be starting in September. We wanted to hit the ground running so that we're preparing people for the 2027 legislative sessions. The goal of our collaborative is to develop state-specific policy briefs by the end of the collaborative, to develop published contributions or leadership presentations that collaborative members can give at the state level at conferences, and then to push through and create a plan for advocacy to take place moving forward from 2027 and beyond. We really think that the key to success at the state level is creating those cross-state relationships. We know coalitions work. We know the strength in numbers that exist. And we know sometimes there are states and there are legislators that feel guilty when their state isn't doing as much as the next door neighbor state. So we're really hoping to bring these people together to really focus on training, individual training, advocacy, policy, storytelling, but really give them the time and the space in order to collaborate, to learn from one another, to strengthen one another, to support one another, so that every single state can push for a sustainable programs moving forward. I was half of this presentation. Unfortunately, Elizabeth is not here to join me today. So I'm going to ask some questions and I'm going to allow some people to jump in there. Mickey, Judith, Barbie, feel free to jump in here. So the first question, and we'll just do this open interview style, is why did we form a national collaborative? And what were some of the specific gaps and challenges that we aim to address in that? And I covered a little bit of it, but I'd love to hear from the rest of the group.
I don't mind. And can you hear me okay, Trip? I'll just start with that.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. I am actually so excited, and I'm definitely not. Elizabeth is the individual who came behind on this one, and she's the one with the idea, but I was extremely on board with it. And I would like to take a moment to discuss some of my thoughts and features on that because it will relate to what you're asking. When I went to my first Capitol Hill Day, it was 2020, and I talked to my legislator. Today, as everyone knows, or a lot of people on these knows, I tend to be the voice or the marketing department. I set a lot of messaging across different programs advocating for higher education in prison. However, at that time, I didn't speak very well. I remember I thought an expletive was appropriate in almost every other word. I just wasn't doing very well, so to speak. Not that my heart wasn't in it, but I was definitely not appropriate. And I was paired with somebody who was fabulous named Kim Haven. And Kim Haven will also be somebody that will be helping the individuals in this collaborative to develop themselves in the same way that I was developed. And she sat down and she had a meeting with me afterwards. And she's like, you have to clean up your messaging or you're never going to get your point across. So I understood then, and I took some time, and I've gotten to the point where I'm at legislator meetings and they actually literally ask for me because I have worked on that. That is one part of what we're hoping to develop with this collaborative, and one of the pieces, at least through the prism that I see it, because I know every person on this call that's going to do that is going to discuss this, a different part of their piece and what they see as the importance. The second part that we want to think about this is right now there are some issues going on with the government, and there are some parts and pieces that we know are happening. And we need to be prepared to change our argument and change the way that we do things in order to reach people. Because at the end of the day, the issue of how we reach people is the most important part, because I can have the most stunning argument, but if I'm not being appropriate with that argument, if I'm not making an argument that communicates an idea, then I'm not being effective. We know that there is discussion right now in the White House to move the U.S. Department of Education to disbar the U.S. Department of Education and return those rights to the states. I don't want to get into the political agree or disagree, because I believe that really takes away from everything with everyone. But instead, I'd like to say we can anticipate those arguments. And what we can do is we can look at the way that we do that. So the way that we do that and the way that helps us is by preparing advocates that are all educated across all of the issues going on, so that they can provide that larger and better message to their individual states. And through those states, why we might not in the future be able to advocate or work with the U.S. Department of Education, assuming it downsizes or goes out of or is disillusioned altogether, we now will be able to bring people together and help people with a common strong message who are well trained and accurate in order to allow them to bring this forward. This also builds into something that Tripp said, where we can look at the different policies, what's working in Massachusetts, what's working in Ohio, and how can that be brought to a state like Illinois, or vice versa, obviously. As many of you know, and as you can see in my background, I am actually something like an hour away from Chicago. I go up to Illinois every time. The ability and the power for somebody like me to help an advocate in Illinois, or even just be there to quietly support them, because sometimes it can be extremely daunting to sit down in front of these individuals and have your moment or your 5-minute elevator pitch. And having that support with them is something that we also hope to build within this coalition. It is these pieces and these parts that we're discussing that I hope adequately answers your question, Tripp, in order to what the collaborative is going to powerfully allow us to do.
Yeah, perfect. We talk about sustainability and the need to make sure that our programs are moving forward, that we've got good access to education on the inside, that we've got good access to education upon release. And that takes policy change. It takes the ability to miss the pendulum swings that go back and forth. Funding is going to change. The landscape is changing. The political nature is changing. But if we can lock that in and get some policy that says, no, digital equity is a right of individuals that are incarcerated, that can sustain, at least temporarily. And that's our goal. So thank you, Mickey. Really appreciate that. Next thing I want to look at, and I know there are several people that can answer this question, is what are the significant state level policy barriers that exist? What do we keep running into? What are the barriers that withstand or withhold us from securing the things that we're looking for? And how can a collaborative help address those challenges?
I can speak to Florida when it comes to state barriers, and you name them, we have them. Florida is definitely at the end of the scope of where it comes to access to higher education for individuals currently incarcerated and also those coming home. And one of the things that is great about this collaborative is that it's going to bring up forth where those levels are for each particular state. That's what we are looking for, 1 to 3 individuals for each state. We actually have a good amount that we've already interviewed. We had results of 80 plus applications, and I believe those included I don't know how many states right now that we've already agreed with individuals to support that policy work. But what's going to do is going to bring individuals that are up in the front of their state level. As you know, we've been working really hard in this space of access to higher education for many years. And some of you here are veterans in this. You know, Vera has been there for years. FICGN, all of you are, you know, individuals that have been working in entities and supporters of access to higher education. We don't want that work to be lost. And so that's why we want to ensure that we have the knowledge of what's happening in each particular state so that we can provide a place, a platform for people to come together and see what support it's needed, what resources are needed, what are we able to do to support them in that journey. Maybe a state of Maine has a lot of different ideas of what's worked for them that can perhaps be brought to Florida, and consider those barriers and how they've been able to overcome them so that we can do the same ourselves. So what we're offering is exactly that. It's a place of collaboration to be able to come together and discuss those barriers that are happening in your particular state or in your community for that matter, engaging in that legislative advocacy and research. And what we also want to do is stakeholders and members of our coalition like you guys to have a united front when it comes to that messaging. So that's another part of want to make sure that we're all in one same voice and one same level of these discussions, because we don't want to hurt also all the work that's been done in the process, particularly in this current climate, you know, political climate that we are facing. So we want to make sure that we have a strong message, that we know how to deliver that message, that we are equipped with storytelling, that we're equipped with, you know, how far we've come and how it's important that we don't lose all this work that's been done in the process, and that we learn where those states are lacking and what particular barriers are happening with those particular states so that we can have that support brought to them, right? So that they can see that there's a space where they can learn for those who have been able to overcome those barriers in other states. So to answer your question, Trip, we don't have the answers to all the state barriers, and people will probably be able to talk about their particular state or maybe even just their particular community, because I can tell you that the community of South Florida, it's very different to what the state of Florida looks like when it comes to those barriers. So these are things that we also want to learn. And one particular thing that's going to happen out of this collaborative is also that, you know, second nature, that research as to learn where we're lacking, where we can provide the support, what are the differences. And so what we're just offering is basically a community where people can come together to have those discussions.
Yeah, Judith, you hit on a really, really good point there at the end. Different legislators want to hear different things. Some want to hear the heart stories, the personal impact. Some want data. They want raw numbers. Give me the facts. Some want a deep dive into the why, the research, the evidence behind, the how much support, the big picture story. And we've got to understand that going in so that everyone's not approaching with a here's my impact story. I hope that it touches all of you. We've got to address every single need as we walk in there. And one of the biggest hurdles that we've heard from people all over is we don't have that as kind of a one-stop shop. You know, I can individually do my research and I can look at all the data in my state and I can find somebody to have that story, but it's a lot of legwork. If we can come together and share that information, to have a repository of all the evidence-based practices that go on, the successes that exist, the actual policy language that exists in other states, so that you can bring that to the table in your advocacy. it just strengthens the resolve across the board. So the more information, the more cross leveling that we have in our advocacy, the better off we're going to be. Something else that has come up specifically in the design of this collaborative is we want to meld the voices of currently incarcerated individuals, formerly incarcerated individuals, and the allies that support them. So I'd love to hear from somebody else. Why is it important that we have a multitude of voices in our advocacy strategy?
That's such a great question, and it actually kind of part of the last question is going to be part of this. Truly, one of the things that we deal with in Tennessee is still that stupid little ban the box. Right, we can't get this freaking box off of the University of Tennessee system. I'm just going to call them out in every room that I'm in. And it seems small, and ban the box is not enough. But what it does is make me have to have pre-entry conversations with our students who say that they want to apply to University of Tennessee. And I have to say, hey, look, this is the reality you're going to face, but we will get you through this. Man, we've had alumni come out and apply with 4.0 GPAs and be denied just based on that box. So it's a symptom of a larger problem, right? And some years ago, when I first got into this realm, I did the research. I wrote the draft bill. I coordinated with policy folks in legislative offices, and we carried it through a legislative session where it was ultimately killed, like massacred in subcommittee. But in Louisiana, we have a successful ban the box operation, maybe the first in the nation, or one of the first in the nation, really setting the example in Operation Restoration. And in speaking with Sarita at one point, I'm like, this is what happened. And she asked me the question of who was carrying the message. And I thought about that. Who was carrying the message? And one of the things that we have to think about as we deal with our representatives is that they're people too, and they carry their own bias. So the person who does the research and does the grunt work and maybe spends 40, 50 hours a week on something may not be the face that needs to carry the message. So when you're dealing with a policy arena, you need that multitude of voices, because every voice does not resonate with every person. And everyone's expertise is not conducive to every situation. So you've got to have that variety. One person can't do it all. And we have to lean on each other's expertise and messaging to be able to carry that successfully.
Absolutely. So well said. You bring up ban the box. What an interesting path and journey that has been in across the country. A lot of people push for a national ban the box, federal level. That didn't really go anywhere. And so they started pushing small legislators, city governments, metropolitan cities. And slowly it started getting groundswell. But you know what changed ban the box for a majority of the places that actually passed it was public awareness. Public awareness campaigns did more to help ban the box than legislative advocacy. Why? Because when the general public says, yeah, what are we doing here? This doesn't make sense. And not somebody that's constantly belaboring the legislators about getting it fixed, not a political action committee, not a lobbyist, but the public. They're getting emails from their constituency that says, this just doesn't make sense. What are we doing? That changes a ton. So part of this collaborative, part of this this program is not just focused on the legislative advocacy. We really want to broaden and get more public advocacy campaigns going to humanize, to make the general public realize that the more we can do to provide education on the inside, the more we can do to provide education upon reentry, the more we can do to provide access to digital equity and access to good jobs, the less crime there is, the less money you're putting into prisons. And it's going to take a shift in public perception to really change every location. We can't just do this legislative body by legislative body. So I'd love to, Marianne, you're jumping and you're gearing to jump in. I'm gonna give you some time to speak on anything that we've jumped in that we've talked about thus far.
So to your point about shaping policy, I have kind of an overall question about the overlap. I mean, at the federal level, even, you see recently that, the White House is not afraid to use funding as a, as a stick to change policy, be it on a variety of issues of how the states and even private universities that are taking federal money, how they react when there's an issue that the White House is, feels is either unfair or not consistent with the Constitution, or whatever reason that they have. My question is there the advocacy at the federal level that could impact something like ban the box, and even while the Department of Education is being taken down and put with more control at the state level, is there anything at the federal level that is undergoing? And I apologize, I'm new, I don't really know what is happening behind the scenes. I know there's been a ton of work, but for these types of issues, my other question about the overlap with federal and state, there's a new White House task force being put into place for the BOP, yet those prisons are in the states. And I'm just curious, what under the new structure, and it sounds like a really good structure with this coalition, where does the BOP say getting into an Illinois prison or a Florida prison, where does that fall in your structure?
Yeah,
or how is
great question. Mickey, jump in, please.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on at least part of that. I'm not quite sure where BOP moves in the future, but I'll address that. I would like to say that nothing that we're saying right now inherently takes away from the federal work that Unlock Higher Education does. The collaborative and the statewide piece will be the collaborative and the statewide piece, and we're looking at that grassroots movement. But like Tripp was addressing earlier, we also understand that ban the box on a federal level didn't always work, but once it came down to a smaller community level, it did work. So we will still have the excuse me. We will still have the Unlock Higher Education Coalition pushing on some of these issues, discussing these issues. We have our 6 priorities that we've discussed that you can see on our website. And if you have another concern or another idea, my suggestion here, and I always put this in with everybody, email it straight to me and let me look at it, and I will send it to Judith, and I'm sure she will discuss it with the rest of the steering committee and see where it fits in with our overall plan. Now, that comes back to where I defer on the Bureau of Prisons discussion. That's a fantastic discussion. It sounds like it actually does have some statewide pieces to it. And that would be something that would be worked with within our collaborative when we're discussing those parts. But when we're discussing at a higher level in federal, that would be Unlock Higher Education. But that would be something that we would discuss and determine what Unlock Higher Education stance is on. So you would go ahead and email that. I'll package it up with some research for Judith, because I already make her miserable enough. I might as well give her some extra information before we start. She can discuss that with the steering committee. And even if we don't choose to take that up as something in particular, we can definitely reach out with you and feed you some information, give you some resources, and give you some information that you can use. And remember, these individuals that we are training, like Tripp said earlier, we are putting tools in a toolbox. We're not inherently saying that they belong to Unlock Higher Education, only identify and work on Unlock Higher Education for the rest of time. That doesn't mean why they aren't conducting themselves under Unlock Higher Education's banner that they won't have to follow rules and they won't have to follow guidelines to ensure that they're within us. But again, everywhere I go, I argue with everybody about how Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time. And when I'm on Unlock Higher Education time, I rarely, if ever, bring up the Chicago Bulls. Well, for me at least, right? So the ideal is for, to use this analogy or this example, by going through the statewide collaborative and by learning to communicate and build better, while I might become a better communicator at discussing those NBA basketball ideas, that wouldn't inherently be a part of what I did with Unlock Higher Education, but it would be tools that I possess within my toolbox. If that makes any sense, does that answer your question, Marianne? Trip, did you want to add to anything? You are a brilliant man. Please don't give me
absolutely. What I will say, Marianne, is once an advocate, always an advocate. And just because you focus or you start on the state level does not mean that you don't move your way up into the federal level. And the data is consistent across the board, right? The data that I bring to my state legislator to get a digital equity bill passed is going to be the same data that I'm going to bring to my congressman to get a national digital equity bill passed. We as Unlock Higher Ed and we as a collaborative of advocates will certainly continue to look at what is going on with the reauthorization of the Second Chance Act, with the potentially Second Step Act, with any criminal justice reform and with any advocacy that impacts education on the inside or education for those that are coming out of incarceration.
And
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And just to close us out on that part, you know, I remember our first and foremost focus right now is our asks that we have worked on with Hilde in the past, the digital equity, the pay equity, disability services, ban the box, default student loan remediation, and ELL support. These are have been our advocacy asks in the past. We are trying to just not lose all the work that it's been done, and it's been done by you guys. I see entities here that have been done, you know, done phenomenal work. You know, Vera, Healthy Routines, CHEI, FICGN. You guys have been doing all this work. All we're offering is a place where we can come and collaborate into what's best practices so that we can bring them to our own community and continue to support that work and not lose it in the state of turmoil that we're currently living in this political climate. And we're shifting our focus to the state level, but not necessarily doing a state policy. We're shifting our focus to the state level for the grassroots, for access to those individuals doing the work, and we'll still continue to push forward those legislative asks, whether they're at the state level or federal level. That's why we've combined our subcommittees right now, because we're working hand in hand to try to support each other. But as Tripp mentioned at the very beginning, we need to learn where each state is at and what those barriers look like and what is needed so that they can feel that they're supported with this very platform that you're currently being in. And with that,
Judith.
any other questions? Oh, all right. With that, I just want to remind you guys, we have, again, our state and federal subcommittees have been combined, and actually all of our subcommittees have been combined to meet to ensure that we put all our efforts together into getting this collaborative in place. We currently have representation from more than 20 states already confirmed with advocates. We have still several interviews to go through to ensure that we have all states represented. We're currently looking for states like Alaska, Arkansas, Hawaii, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, New Jersey, and New Mexico, North Dakota, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, and Wyoming. But nevertheless, even if I didn't mention your state and you are interested in supporting this work and supporting, being part of a community where we're all working together, again, this is a collaborative. This is a place of working together to ensure that we have one strong voice delivering that message to that population that we are confronting or that we're dealing with, and that people feel supported when they're doing this work. So we ask you to consider joining this collaborative. We will be providing, again, education, messaging, support, and a lot of other, skilled workshops. And I ask for those workshops, you who have already been the experts and have been doing this for quite some time, to please reach out to us, because we need your support. We need your involvement, and we can't do this alone, and it takes a village, and you are part of this village. So please, reach out to us, because there's always room and space for you who've already been doing this work to support those who are coming new in this space to be able to further that work in their own areas. And the last thing that I want to stress, and that is that we have the Rise Up conference coming up in September. If you haven't looked into it, please look into joining, look into, provide, I think the proposals are up already. If not, please consider, submitting a proposal. This is a space where a lot of voices come together as well to discuss what's happening in the space of education. This Rise Up conference has been very successful in the past years. I encourage you to join either as a presenter or definitely be there to listen and support those voices. And what else do I have left? We have next month, we have the continuing conversation with Ben Bright, Director of Disability Access in Prison Community, and Dr. Jennifer Montag, Associate Director of the National Center for College and Students and Disabilities, to continue that conversation of access to, education for those individuals who need special accommodations and disabilities. So I encourage you guys to be part of that particular conversation next month as well. And if you're interested in coming and talking about your work, your organization, and what's been happening in your field and how you can get support or educate the communities out there, I encourage you to also reach out to us. We always have great speakers every month. We try to feature our members and non-members, because we are, again, a space of collaboration. Any questions with that?
I have a quick addition I wanted to bring up. I did this kind of when you weren't looking. I added to your notes. There is also a Rise Up Summit that is going to be in person, all expenses paid. They have spots. I have put the address in the chat and into the meeting agenda so that you can sign up. And then I would like to take a moment, and Judith wouldn't like me doing this. I'll get in trouble for it later, but that's okay. Do not forget, Judith was just featured on the Breaking Change podcast, where she discusses her journey, where she went, and how that helped arrive her. And that will lead to a new book coming out. But for now, it's totally free. It was really amazing. I was driving down the road in my car, and my next podcast flipped over in my car, and it was just Judith talking. So do not forget
The good, the bad, and the ugly. For the sake of the work, right? So this is hard work, especially for those who, have been directly impacted, and we take it in our, in our heart. And even for those who have not been and yet are still doing this work, we thank you for that. But this is hard work, and we want to make sure that we provide that support and that encouragement for those who are doing this type of work. All right. Do you have any other questions, guys? I give you back 2 minutes of your day. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Again, we're here to support you. We're here to learn from you. We're here to provide a space of collaboration, and so that we can all be one strong voice, because there's power in numbers. And so we want to be that power to move forward.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.